As much as I understand, appreciate, and respect the romanticism around the father son rule, I just am not a massive fan. However, outside of father son and academy selections that are diluting our drafts, I think there's a case to be made that Harry Sheezel is quickly becoming the unluckiest superstar in the AFL. Considering that there is kind of a big three in terms of that 20 to 22-year-old superstars in the league that play the same position, Nick Dacos, Will Ashcroft, and the aforementioned Shees. Shees was the only one that was forced to go to a club that wasn't in a great spot. Where you get drafted matters, as we know. But Nick ending up at Collingwood has aged beautifully, given the way that Collingwood have been able to be a finals and grand final contender pretty much since he got there, whereas Will Ashcroft already has 2 Norm Smith medals under his belt and has played in 3 less finals than Sheezel has played in wins, and they were drafted in the same season. And as someone who firmly believes that Sheezel can be a 400-game AFL player, North Melbourne are in danger of missing out on a generational talent's prime in either a premiership sense or even a contending sense, which would be a massive shame. And we have seen recently clubs and players that are getting frustrated with a lack of performance wanting massive change. Charlie Curnow made his way to Sydney. Christian Petrarca made his way to Gold Coast. Now, granted, I don't think Sheezel is the type to cut and run when he's 23, 24, 25 years of age. I'm not saying that for a moment, and I understand he has a long-term deal in place. We also do kind of know how contracts are deemed value-wise at the moment. But North can't stuff this up. They have made enough bad list decisions that they absolutely cannot get this wrong. And part of where Shees is unlucky is, again, the aforementioned father-son stuff, but also because of what else happened in his draft year. If we go to sort of the best handful and a half of draft picks in his draft season, and of course don't include himself, you're looking at guys like Cadman, Ashcroft, Bailey Humphrey, Ruben Ginbey, Mateus Philippou, Jasper Fletcher, Max Michaelani, and Josh Weddle, all taken in the top 20 of that draft that have proven themselves, or probably going to prove themselves in Mateus's instance, of being really good AFL players. Of that group of 7 players, 5 of them played in the finals last year, and Sheezel's played in 11 wins in his career, whereas all 5 of those players that played finals last year played in more wins than that this season. And part of the unlucky nature for the Shees as well is just how badly out of position and how stunted his year seemed to be. It may have crescendoed against the Tigers in him getting the equal most disposals in any AFL VFL game on record with 54, but it took way too long for him to even become a full-time midfielder this season. In 24, where he absolutely dominated with the following stats you can see on the screen, his centre bounce attendance was 13.2%. In fact, it was higher than Nick Dacos's was this year. And granted, Nick came second in the Brownlow without having as good a season as he had in 24. North Melbourne, what are you doing? You have a generational talent here. And whilst Sheezel, like Dacos, started his career off a halfback flank, and even this season copped some criticism from Kane Corns, fairly or unfairly, depending on where you stand on that, for getting the easy ball, Sheezel's numbers stand up brilliantly against Dacos and Ashcroft, by the way, over the course of their young careers. Now, somewhat of Nick's stats are a little bit inflated because of the fact he's had the extra season under his belt, so the coaches' votes absolutely are inflated because of that and because he's a genuine freak. But those numbers from Sheezel do not suggest that he is a tier or 2 tiers below those other 2 boys. And whilst you've got guys like Finn Callahan that have been drafted highly, like Sheezel, who didn't go as a father-son or an academy pick, GWS proved with their basically front office that they were able to put together a really good squad. North haven't done that yet, regardless of what you think of what they're going to do in the years to come. Now, again, I want to make this clear. Sheezel seems extremely loyal. I believe he should be captain of North next year. And for crying out loud, if their round 1 game, and let's say it's against Fremantle, for example, if the centre bounce fully fit is not Brayshaw, Sarong, and Young versus Davies Uniacke, Sheezel, and Wardlaw, I am pretty sure North Melbourne fans are going to riot, and so they should. His stunted positioning this season, sometimes half forward, sometimes centre bounce player, sometimes half back flanker, resulted in him having the lowest player rating of his career and a downward spike in the stats you can see there. That is not the markings of a genuinely good footballer. It is a sign of a club that is going through an identity crisis with the most naturally talented player on their list. Tristan Xerri is one of the best players in the competition in his position. He only plays ruck because he's a ruckman. Say what you will about Nick Larkey, the fact that he is a goal merchant, even though that's what he wants to do and that's all that he needs to do as a part of his role. It's not as if he's spending 12% of his game time at centre half back, circa Oscar Allen at West Coast this year. Paul Curtis, one of the most up-and-coming high half-forward, mid-forward threats, doesn't play out of the back pocket some of the time. Sheezel is their only talent. Even if you think LDU is a B+, A- or A-grade midfielder, only plays midfield. Sheezel doesn't. And part of it is North Melbourne just don't have the pieces to cover him. Sheezel is their best rebounding defender. Sheezel is their best midfielder. But he's not necessarily their best high half forward anymore. Now, granted, that's what he came into the AFL to be. He kicked 38 goals in his under-18s campaign, and to this day, is the only player ever to have 3 200-plus Supercoach point games in the Coates Talent League that included a 33 disposal and 6-goal game against Tasmania. Yet if we have a look at all the players in the AFL last year that are between 20 and 22 years of age, Sheezel was the 18th rated player of everyone that had played 15 or more games last year. And all I ask you is, do you think Harry Sheezel at his best or at the end of last year would have been around that mark? And the answer is yes and no, because he was the 18th rated player in the competition last year. Not in that age bracket, across the board. And I think we can all admit that at his best, Sheezel should be in the top 10 of the best players in the competition. And we know that this going backwards is not going to fly for a very long time. And whilst North Melbourne do have problems defensively, and I think they are going to get better in their front half, and the inclusions of Darling and Parker were good last year, Parker especially, Jai Simpkin wanted out, and rightly so, because he shouldn't be in there. And neither should Tom Powell. Whether those two and Dylan Stevens rotate off the wings, I don't really care. But you can't act as if Sheezel is your Sean Burgoyne. Burgoyne worked beautifully as a utilitarian player because Port Adelaide and Hawthorn were both really good teams. But back to the 20 to 22-year-olds just for a second, of the 17 players that were rated above him, 14 of them played finals last year. Sam Darcy was one of them and the Bulldogs finished 9th. The only other two that were rated above him, his own teammate in Paul Curtis and Richmond's Seth Campbell. And with no disrespect to those two players, I would take Sheezel over both of them any day of the week. Harry Sheezel's a superstar. I'm not going to accept people not thinking that, to be honest. He just is. He's a delight to watch. But because North Melbourne are not that good, they're off Broadway, and Sheezel wasn't a father-son like Ashcroft and Dacos, he's just going to be easy to point out for criticism because he's their best player. Yes, their best player. And right now, he's been put through the ringer because for a lot of circumstances out of his control, he is being held back as one of the true great playmakers in the AFL. He is North Melbourne's point guard, and they're wanting him to play 1 through 4, and let's be honest, they'd want him to play a centre position, aka ruck, if he was about a foot taller. He isn't, so he can't. But if North continue to stuff him around, and North continue to not be good, I wouldn't blame him at 27, 28, 29 years of age going, what the heck am I doing here? And I hope that doesn't happen, by the way, because I love him, and I love seeing good players at every club. And I hope it gets better for him soon. So I hope you liked this video. Like it if you did. Subscribe to join the Daz Talks Footy family. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.